The Hand Under the Bed. Growing up, I was always a chicken when it came to scary stories. My family and I attended church, but back then, as my sisters and I were young, we were not as spiritual as we are now. The first time I experienced this was probably when I was in grade 5. It was a long time ago. I remember it was a Sunday evening when my oldest sister's boyfriend came over. After watching a movie, my siblings and I all gathered together with my oldest sister and her boyfriend as he told us many ghost stories. As the stories got deeper and scarier, I began to cry because I was too scared. That following Monday morning, my two oldest sisters, me and my younger brother, got up to get ready to go to school. I had two younger sisters who weren't in school yet. In our house that we were currently living in, our bedrooms were all upstairs on the second floor, while the kitchen and the living room was downstairs. Right before my oldest sister was going to head out for school, she asked me to go upstairs to her room and go grab her jacket that she'd forgotten. Without hesitation, I did as I was told. My sister's room was very well organized, since she was the only one out of all our siblings to have her own room. Her twin-size bed was centered in the middle of the room against the wall, and her bed sheets were nicely fixed. As I began to look around for her jacket, which was hung onto the back of her chair, that's when I saw it. I saw an arm, just from elbow down to the hands, slip out from under her bed. The hand did a half-circle slide on the ground as it went back under the bed. At the moment, I thought it was my two youngest sisters who might have woken up early and decided to play in my older sister's room. I walked around the bed to the other side. I bent down and lifted up the bed sheets to discover nobody under the bed. At that instant, I felt shivers throughout my entire body as the hair from the back of my head raised. Unbelievably, I ran crying out of her room back downstairs to tell the rest of my siblings what had just happened. Until this day, I can still remember the image of the hand sliding out from under the bed. It might have just been a quick 5 seconds, but those 5 seconds still scares me until this day when I think about it. I don't know what might have triggered me to see that arm, but I tend to tell myself that it was just my imagination playing with me because of all the ghost stories I heard the night before. But I know for a fact that this really happened and is not my imagination. Has anything like this ever happened to anyone before? Pinned to my bed by a spirit. About 10 months ago in August, I had been having very strange occurrences. Every time I go to sleep, I would feel a presence, as if someone or something was watching me. There was one night that I was trying to fall asleep, but I couldn't because I heard something else breathing with me. That's when I told my ex-boyfriend. He thought that I was overreacting. I tried to ignore the presence as much as I could, until one night, my ex-boyfriend and his friend came over to my house at around 2 a.m. His friend said that he thinks the Centera bracelets that I had on were the reason something was watching me. He looked at one of the bracelets and found that one of the eyes had 2 black dots instead of 1. This means that someone had placed an evil eye on me. We burned it and checked if the other bracelet had anything, but it didn't, so I left it on. That night, I fell asleep without a problem. I had a strange dream that the bracelet was still intact. All of a sudden, I woke up laying on my back, which was strange because I had fallen asleep on my stomach, and I don't move that much in my sleep. I could hear my brother getting ready for school, so I figured it was around 5:30 a.m. Being that early, I tried to go back to sleep, but as soon as I closed my eyes, I felt something touching my shoulders, and before I could even try to figure out what it was, I was pinned so hard that I could feel my bed denting. I could still hear my brother's footsteps outside my door, so I tried to scream, but all that came out was a wisp of breath. I began to panic, trying to kick myself free, but no use. The pressure on me just increased. I started to hear a strange sound that I can only describe as a sound of wind blowing. It was rushing throughout my ears, growing louder and louder. I started to feel as if my insides were moving, not painful, but not a comfortable feeling either. I felt like it was trying to pull me out of my body. I prayed silently to God to please make it stop, and as soon as I did, I ran out of my room and I went downstairs. My brother was eating breakfast. It was 6:15 a.m. I checked the bracelet that I still had on again, and was shocked to see that one of the two eyes had 2 dots on it, but when we checked it, it didn't have anything. I later found out through my grandmother, who has contact with spirits, that there is a spirit, a man actually, that is envious of my body and wants it. Like an incubus, sort of. Whenever I let my guard down, that spirit takes the advantage to haunt me in my dreams. He says he takes the physical form of a friend or a family member and has his way with me. He also tried to pin me down again, but it never works. All I can say is that ever since that night, I have a heightened sense to when a spirit or something is in the room. For those of you who had this problem too, here are some things that you can do. Number 1, rearrange your room, most of your bed, since the spirit knows where you sleep. What this does is confuse the spirit so it can't find you. Number 2, place a small glass of water under your bed, and if not, then somewhere close to your bed. Don't be surprised if the water evaporates fast. If you have a spirit in your room, that's exactly what it's supposed to do. If you see it empty, refill it. Number 3, place a shot glass of ammonia under your bed. What this does is scare the evil spirits away. They don't like strong smells. If you see it empty, refill it. Number 4, lavender incense, the real lavender. It helps you go to sleep. The more things you do, the better. I don't know that REM sleep, but I really don't want to find out what would have happened if I just laid there and taken the experience. If it was a dream state, then how did I hear my brother walking down the stairs, and why did I feel as if something was moving my insides? Do not just lay there and take it. The haunted bed frames. A friend offered a white wicker bed frame set to me for free. At the time, I lived in a very remote mountain in Hawaii, up in the elevation of 5,500 feet. The house I rented was built on a hilly side, with the upstairs living room off the ground at least 15 feet. I had my partner at the time to go and pick up the bed set one evening. He brought home an older antique-looking set instead. When I asked him what happened to the white set, all he said was that she gave me this one, and that he had a hard time with the bed in his truck. It fell out of his truck and onto the road several times. It broke a wooden wheel, so he thought nothing about it. After I had the set in my guest bedroom for days, I started to put the frames together, and suddenly, I felt so sick to my stomach. It was a nauseating sick, and almost threw up. I had to leave the room. It was very cold, and so I thought it was just from the living up in the clouds, right? One late evening, on a Friday night, my partner had a get-together with his friends. He called to say he wouldn't be in after midnight, and I said no problem. I was sitting on my living room couch that's leaning against the wall, and I was reading when I heard and felt someone pounding on the wall. This must be a joke, because for one thing, the house is on stilts, and no way could someone climb and reach that wall outside unless they were on a very tall ladder. The noise continued, and then the pounding was coming from a back kitchen door that was closed and locked. I heard more pounding, hard pounding. I heard a voice call my name, but I knew better not to open a door at night since I was home alone. I called out my friend's name, but no answer. That started to get me alarmed, so I reached for a bat just in case. I immediately got on a CB radio and tried calling my partner, but I had no luck in reaching him. I know I did not hear his truck come up the hill, so I was quite upset and shaken a bit. Terrified of who could be outside my door in the pitch dark, and especially being by myself was enough for me to call my sister. At the time, I thought it could have been a neighbor. I told her that I was scared, and I wanted her to try and reach my partner since I could not get through to him. I had to use the bathroom so bad, I asked if she would stay on the line, and I would be right back. As I put the phone down and walked about 5 feet, the pounding started again, making me run back to the couch and put my legs up. Did you hear that? Did you hear that? I asked her. She immediately told me to calm down and that she was going to make some calls. No luck though. As I'm waiting, I was too afraid to move, and my sister stayed with me on the phone. I could hear a truck coming up the hill and knew it was my friend coming home. As soon as he walked into the house, I told him to take the fucking bed out of here. He tossed the frames out of the deck, and it landed on the lawn below. The very next morning, as I was getting ready for work, he was downstairs throwing the bed sets into his truck to take to the dump. A very loud sound in my ears came out, like a growl and a swoosh, and I felt like it came out of me. I told him that the bed was haunted and never would I want any bed frames again, especially old ones. I don't know what came into the house and made me sick for weeks before the bed was finally removed, but it felt very evil. I could tell you that the bed had many different numbers on it, written on the back frames. My lady friend now no longer collects antiques in her home since I had warned her about buying beds. Her mother passed away after being ill for a while. Later, when I saw her in a store, she told me, "My mother was asking for you." Well, I really only knew her mother a little bit and I hardly spoke to her. My house was blessed in every corner and have not had any more sicknesses since. I hope to hear from someone telling what they think of this.